Hi, so our presentation is about if China should keep the logographic system or change it to the phonetic system. Zainab and Zainab and me are going to argue that the logographic system should stay in place, while um, the others will get into why it should not be put in place and change it to the phonetic system. So we're arguing for the logographic system mainly because of the historical significance. Chinese characters have been around for almost 3,000 years, and a lot of most of the country like identify with this type of writing system more because of how standardized it has become. The conception of written systems are usually unstable, and many just decide to progress onward with the systems that have already been put in place. Um, And once it reaches like a maturity, they're usually there for good, and it's really difficult to just entirely change the systems. Since these types of languages have been developing for long periods of time, dialects have started to pop up, and usually the dialects fall back on like the standardized script. So like for example like Cantonese or like Fujianese, like they can all like still communicate with each other using Mandarin because it's like the standardized language. And also like classic works that have been around for thousands of years, like the Analects by Confucius and the Art of War by Sun Tzu, are written in Chinese characters that kind of symbolize like the cultural and intellectual traditions that China has.
Right, I think that's a really good point, but I feel like the older texts are not as big as a point compared to like being able not legibility and like being able to like understand and read the the scripts.
For example, let's say in English that we have plenty of works of literature from other languages that are originally incomprehensible. The Bible being one of the most important works in English for our culture, and yet it was written in Greek and Aramaic. But it can be translated still. So even without the original language, it still can be have meaning and importance culturally.
Right, and also I feel like the Analects and like the works written by Sun Tzu, they're mostly written in, like ancient and classical Chinese, which most people in China can't even understand anymore.
That's true, but like I would say they, as much as like you can't like read them and like understand them, they still have like that historical significance. And while like yeah, like as I like as I keep saying, like you can't understand, like I think China has this like huge um emphasis on preserving historical entities or like items. Um so
One difficulty that comes from the logographic system is definitely is moving forward with technology. As you might note, that almost all technology nowadays uses Pinyin as the input language because it's simply impossible to make a keyboard that works via logographic Chinese characters. There's just too many of them. So go as you go forward, the more technology you adopt, the harder it is to continue using traditional Chinese, and the less it becomes used. Like
mhm.
Pinyin is kind of the default now, even in China, because of whenever you're typing, you're just using Pinyin and then selecting the character from there.
Yeah, there's also the point of the Taiwanese Juyin system or the Bopomofo, but like that's like a whole different kind of set of characters that you have to learn purely on phonetics, that then you can spell out the actual characters where you can read and understand. But I feel like that's it's still a phonetic system, but it adds a bit more difficulty compared to just using like a Latin alphabet.
That's true, but I feel like at the same time, pinging is just like an in between for like Mandarin speakers and like the rest of the world. I think yeah, it has like the aspects of like the romanization of like Western scripts, but I feel like pinging was just made to make it easier for just everyone to communicate, and it wasn't made to like get rid of the Chinese characters, because like they themselves have like and like artistic value.
Which like brings me to the next point on why we should go with the logographic system. It's because of the artistic and aesthetic value that it brings. The Chinese writing system is also a foundation for traditional arts like calligraphy, which is recognized as an calligraphy, my bad, which is recognized as an interchangeable cultural heritage by the UNESCO. Calligraphy is a significant form of art in China, which is tied closely to the logographic system, expressing personal emotions, historical reverence, and artistic flair. The artistic practice is more than just writing, it is a form of expression deeply rooted in the Chinese philosophy and aesthetics. Efforts to preserve the writing system also aim to protect these forms of cultural artistry. Additionally, as an artistic practice, Chinese calligraphy relies heavily on the visual form of characters. A phonetic system, especially if it is used as a script like pinyin, would lack the aesthetic qualities of Chinese characters, significantly altering or eliminating this art form.
Yes, but that when you switch to a phonetic system, it doesn't necessarily mean that you can't keep using the traditional logographic system for artistic purposes. You still can. It's just for everyday use it wouldn't be. But you know, you don't write in calligraphy every day. You don't go through all those complicated motions every day when writing everyday Chinese anyway. So I think there is an argument that can be made that they're distinct anyway.
Right, and
Yeah,
also
go ahead, go ahead.
okay. Also for like Japanese, like they adapted like a syllabary system where it's a combination of Chinese characters and a phonetic system. And I feel like with that you can also still continue the artistic and aesthetical value of the calligraphy while like while having a phonetic system as well.
That's true, but like kind of like going back to like the historical significance, like calligraphy was like the first type of like script that China had, and it has there's just so much symbolism with it. I totally like understand the point of like the Japanese like kanji, katakana, hiragana, and how like that whole system with like when it within itself is extremely useful and like innovative, but I think like I don't know, like I think like what I said before, like pinging is just like the in between, and like it's just really difficult now to like truly flesh out like all the nuances like phonetically that like Chinese characters have.
Right, that's definitely a good point because like compared to Japanese, Chinese is a tonal language does and Japanese doesn't really have a way to mark like tone other than like pitch accent. So I think
Mm-hmm.
that's definitely a good point.
Yeah, and I guess like our last point is just kind of like circling back to like dialects and regional like variations, like from Chinese scripts, so many dialects have arisen from it, and if you make it all phonetic, you're losing all of those dialect variances when you change like the logographic system to phonetic. So like especially um with Cantonese, as like it's like the most commonly like known dialect besides Mandarin. And it's spoken by so many people. It has like a different phonetic structure completely. So it would just be like hard for Cantonese speakers to accurately represent their language if they change it like phonetically, because then they'll have to have their own phonetic system too, and so many other like dialects are going to have to like put in their own little like nuances to their languages phonetically.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
The argument of the logographic system and why it should still exist compared to the removal of the system in favor of a phonetic system. The phonetic system is so deeply rooted in every Chinese character and dialect that it would be too hard for all to be scrapped and put into a phonetic system. For example, each Chinese character can be said differently in each dialect, whereas simple word like one in Mandarin and Cantonese can sound so different. In Mandarin, it's yi, and then in Cantonese, it's pronounced yut. The same characters with different pronunciations can be shown as calligraphy and a form of art in China and considered their logographic system. The logographic system is deeply rooted in China's culture and it provides a cultural impact that these different dialects have. But the argument of the transition into the logographic system can be argued that the changes in Chinese language into an easier way for everyone to understand. The advancement of technology has aided us in translating texts that were originally not in English, the biggest one being the Bible. And instead of needing thousands of different Chinese characters memorized to talk in Chinese, a phonetic system would give us the ability to type in pinyin on a keyboard and then selecting the character you would want to use. Not only does the phonetic system greatly increase the understanding of Chinese language and its characters, it makes it so much easier. All in all, the preservation of the logographic system is still needed for the art and history of Chinese culture, and the implementation of the phonetic system can greatly improve the understanding and functionality of Chinese for everyone in everyday life. But not only does Japan use some of the Chinese characters in their language, referred to as kanji, they also use a phonetic system to communicate, so the system isn't impossible to implement.